Really pleased to have the opportunity to join you all. I had my maiden voyage with you last week. Really enjoyed the conversation. Learned a lot more about what Microsoft is doing in this space. So great community. I will share my slides here. Let me just hit the share button and then I will introduce myself. I'm a data guy. I've been with Eckerson Group for almost 4 years, and I run the research group here. We're a boutique research and consulting firm focused on data management and analytics. A lot of the research that I've been focusing on lately is the intersection of AI and data management, and now generative AI and data management, because they help each other in some pretty cool ways. I've just finished up a report about governed data delivery for generative AI. I have another one coming out this month on the new data pipelines to support generative AI, and I've actually put some of that material in here as well. And the overarching theme that I've kind of shared with Paul and others is that I think that generative AI, like a lot of new technologies and like a lot of earlier incarnations of AI, creates incredible possibilities. The caveat, of course, is that it's only as good as the data that you feed it. And so most companies, I think as we all know, have struggled with data governance and data management, insufficient data governance, inefficient data management for a long time. And so there's a need to think hard about how to handle not just the new unstructured text, which is a new area for a lot of folks, but also the tabular data that's going to help ground some of this stuff in facts. So that's a little bit about my lens coming in. I'd love to hear feedback and discussion from folks here. One thing that we're looking to do is continue to expand the conversations we have with early adopters. What I'll share with you is based on findings from some polls that we do, and through that engaging with early adopters, folks that are voting on our polls. Because this is an early space, it's also influenced by what software vendors are looking to do. And so I've been working with a number of startup software companies, and then some of the more established players. As you can see, the report here is sponsored by Informatica. We have stuff coming up in the future with Matillion and Databricks in terms of sponsors. But what we have is very much vendor neutral perspective. But I did want to disclose sponsorship in terms of how that works. So the generative AI adoption is very much underway. And we look at this as 3 stages. They're not mutually exclusive by any stretch. And in fact, they could be done in different order. But generally speaking, the way this is happening is that you've got large language model tools that are being used as standalone platforms. So OpenAI, ChatGPT, Google Bard, and so forth. And that's underway. Looking at data engineering as a case study, we're finding that more than half of data engineering practitioners are already using this stuff to help what they do. So there's an incremental boost to productivity, and that's great. Now the next phase is well underway, which is language model functions within larger tools. So here we're talking about Einstein GPT as part of Salesforce, Copilot as part of GitHub, Joule as part of SAP, and myriad other Copilot offerings. That's another incremental boost to productivity. But where I think the real interesting stuff is now going to happen, and it's underway, is what I call language model driven workflows, LM driven workflows. And this is where you're building these functionalities into proprietary workflows, using custom tools, custom applications, and integrations. And that's where you can start to have companies not just boost productivity, but gain competitive advantage if they do it right, and if they feed it the right data. And throughout these stages, you can see an increasing reliance on domain-specific enterprise data, and an increasing reliance on effective governance, because you need to make darn sure that the data these things feed on is accurate and trustworthy. And so we have a poll underway right now on LinkedIn, and we're finding that of early respondents, I tend to cleanse these to try to focus mostly on practitioners, but 40% say they have I think it's 13-14% are in pilot with LM-driven workflows, excuse me, in production, and then the rest, say 24% in pilot. So there's a lot already going on there, and it's a pretty exciting time. Just a note on terminology. I'm using the term language model. We have in our research differentiated between a large language model, which is ChatGPT, Bard, Bloom, and so forth, trained on vast corpuses of data and up to 1 trillion parameters. I think that the future is really small language models, especially with phase 3 here, focusing, even if you're taking that code trained on everything on the internet, you're focusing it on domain-specific data, which is much smaller. And you're focusing it on addressing domain-specific use cases, because that's where you can start to reduce some of the risks, ideally.
Kevin, you mind going to full screen? We're seeing the preview.
Oh, are you? Yeah. Yes. Hold on 1 second. Okay, how is it now?
We still see the preview. Oh, that's
how about that?
Perfect.
Is that better? Okay,
yes,
good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So, and the trick, as I said, is that you need to have effective governance. We're finding that half of organizations are not very confident, or even the opposite of confident in their ability to deliver high quality, trustworthy data to language models. Key challenges being inefficient data management. So complex environments, heterogeneous environments, all sorts of disconnects in terms of the infrastructure elements that need to hand off data and deliver it in a timely fashion. There's poor data quality, and there's inadequate governance programs that would create and enforce policies. So those challenges have existed for a long time with structured data. And most companies would say they haven't cracked the nut. They're still working to improve data governance. And the challenges are kind of exacerbated when you add unstructured text to the mix, because a lot of companies don't have the right processes in place to make sure that this text has accurate data. So it is a challenge, and it's something that a lot of organizations are just starting to get their arms around. So there's a lot here, but I think the key point I would make is that generative AI or LM-driven workflows, that stage 3 I talked about, is really going to be part of a larger environment and a larger story. And I think that you've got the structured data and the semi-structured data that a lot of companies are pretty good at managing, the associated metadata, and then you've got the unstructured text and images and so forth. But they all need to go through a similar set of processes in terms of integration, cataloging, master data management. I think is important, because if you don't agree on the terminology you're using to describe business entities, even within customer service records, even within financial service records, you need to make sure all that text aligns with it as well. And then governance, of course, looking at specific, say, controls related to access of data, observability of data quality, and so forth. And so these are 5 different processes that are going to feed these workflows that'll include analytics and operations. And I'll talk more about exactly what we mean there. But the key point would be, we shouldn't look at generative AI as an island into itself, because if you're doing it the way you should be, it's going to become stitched into the way you do business normally. So it requires companies to manage and govern multi-structured data in a more holistic manner. All right, so drilling in a little further, there are data pipelines that are required to feed language models. And if we talk about those LM embedded workflows that are applied to domain-specific data, there are 2 ways to do it. One is you can fine-tune a model, which involves pricey compute, involves some real expertise required, or you can do retrieval augmented generation. And you could do both too, but retrieval augmented generation is, I think, a more cost-effective approach, because here you can start to take facts and content that you trust, your own product guide, a book that one of your product experts wrote, text from vetted sources, you put all that into the prompt. And that means that, you know, ideally, what the answers that are returned by the language model are going to be more accurate. So I'll just go through that. That's the high level view of what RAG is. And then there's the data pipeline that's going to feed this. You've got various text sources, Slack messages, emails, all sorts of things, files, PDF documents, and you're going to do some high level familiar things here: extract, load, and transform. The techniques themselves are different. So you're going to extract this text, probably load it to some sort of staging area. Databricks would be an example, or others, and then put that all into a similar format. Tokenize the text, which is going to convert it to little chunks, words, and so forth, or character strings. You're going to have chunks of those tokens that are associated with each other. Could be a few paragraphs, could be certain documents, so that you're retaining the real contextual or the semantic meaning, and then create embeddings that start to apply specific numbers to the way all these chunks and tokens relate to each other. Once you have this, you can load this into a vector database. And so this is a process that I think a lot of companies are just starting to figure out how they can proceed with. They need to figure out how to convert the text to numbers, to tokenized text within a vector database, or vectorized text, I should say. And the vector database is now going to start to return this information when queried by a custom application. So if you picture a flow, someone's going to ask the language model, help me with this, help me understand this product capability. The custom application is going to query the vector database, pull up the most relevant documentation and content, and inject it into the prompt. So it's kind of like asking ChatGPT a question, and then inserting, saying, tell me about President Grant, and adding into the prompt a book about President Grant. So it does the summarizing for you, and you can have the confidence in the outputs. So that's a set of procedures that a lot of companies are just starting to figure out how to go through. You've got, on the vendor side, companies such as Airbyte, such as Fivetran, that will contribute to parts of this. You've got other companies such as Unstructured.io, which will help do most or all of these pieces in terms of taking text and put it into a vector database. And Informatica is doing a lot here too. So this is kind of the new set of steps that companies are trying to get their arms around. And it's really part of a larger story, which is you've got the vector database. In my view, you're going to have that alongside, in a lot of cases, a relational database and a graph database and other things. Because if you're going to talk to a customer about, you're going to have a conversation with a customer, you want to make sure that you have the right facts at hand, such as the amount of their most recent purchase. That could come from a relational database. Those types of facts can also feed the custom application and then get commingled with responses from the language model to actually answer user questions. Graph databases can help, as we know, describe complex relationships between a lot of different entities, users in a social network, and so forth. And they can contribute to, or even be queried by, the language model. And then commercial applications are going to interface with users. I expect that a lot of companies will not want to build an entirely new interface for customers or partners or whoever they're conversing with when they implement the language model. Rather, they'll want to build into and feed the existing interface. So I think that what we're finding is a lot of companies need to think about these additional elements in their environments. So those are some of the key takeaways that we had. We're recommending that companies, data leaders, work with AI leaders and business leaders to define the use cases. Where is their pain? Where is their opportunity to increase efficiency? And if it's internal, possibly creativity. And then start to go in on those use cases. I agree. I think this was one of the takeaways that I had, and was probably explicit in a slide or two from your event a few weeks ago. Some of the early use cases, I think, are going to focus on customer service and also document processing. That makes a lot of sense. And so that's where we'll see pockets of initial use cases. In terms of assembling the team, it's going to have a chief data officer, data engineer, cloud ops engineer in all likelihood, and then the data scientist and natural language processing engineer or machine learning engineer. Those are the folks who, along with the business owner, are going to need to come together to work on this. And as with all things, you need to start with something achievable, try to get a quick win, learn from that, and then move on if you can establish that beachhead of success. So I think, as with most technology initiatives, you need to plan it as part of an integrated process and an iterative life cycle. So I think I've gone about 15 minutes. I would welcome feedback, thoughts. It's a great topic. I see a lot of chat comments here.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Let's go through the people raising hands. Appreciate everyone raising their hand. Let's start with let's see, Mike Novak, I think you might have been first. You want to start with your question?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So thanks, Kevin. Can you go back one or two slides, please? The one that, yeah, that's the one. So no, sorry, there we go. Yeah, that one. So
Okay.
when you were describing this, I come out of the corporate world. You're absolutely right. Going to have those different types of data stores, vector, relational, or graph. The one issue that I've run into, I don't have a real good straight answer to, is great. Where is the logic going to reside that determines, oh, that is a CRM record, let me go to the database. Oh, that's in a PDF, let me go to this place. Oh, so, businesses are complex. They have different data stores and different repositories for reasons. The question I have is, so what's on top of that to know, yes, that's something in this one, not in that one?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm viewing that as part of the custom application because it's going to route requests and orchestrate answers. Because ideally, if you look at this from the user point of view, you're going to put everything into one combined answer through one combined interface. It might be multiple applications or scripts within the application and that kind of thing. But I was using that layer as a critical piece to figure out, from a traffic cop perspective, what goes where.
Yeah, and that sounds to me, I've been around long enough. It's no different than what we were doing 10 years ago when we had data warehouses and you did ETL and got it from different places, and there you go. And that's a good thing. It's not brand new. We have to figure this out. It's let's use what we already know.
No, actually, Michael, if you remember my presentation this summer, you can definitely use function calling. And that's the way how you convert unstructured natural language requests into a formal function calls to your local data storage. If you remember, it's like a business Alexa call. You are talking to Alexa into the natural language, and you can retrieve not just the weather or whatever, but you can retrieve your local sales or whatever you prefer. So that's the best way to do this. If you want to learn more, shoot me a message here. I will explain it in details.
All right. Thank you, Alex.
That's great. Thank you, Alex.
We'll go to Louis and then RJ next. Go ahead, Louis.
Yeah, hello, everybody. This is Luis. Great presentation. No problem. Happens all the time. Can you back up to your RAG slide real quick?
Yeah.
So unlearning has been all the buzz lately, Kevin, and I'll let you kind of set it up however you want, but like there's been a lot of questions about like language models are good about learning, but it's hard to actually get data out, or like if you had a bad data set that went in, unlike other structures. And I wonder if you could kind of talk to that in the structure of like, if you just, the garbage went in and like now you have it, now it exists, like what's your experience or the thinking for getting it out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that I almost should have circular arrows here between language model, custom application, and vector database, because you're going to need to have a feedback loop on the accuracy of answers. And it will be important to unlearn certain things. I think ideally, the more you can reduce the garbage in problem, the better. And that's where we're sort of pounding the table on data governance to try to vet the files before you start to feed it in to the system. And it's tricky because if you've got books and reports and product documents, okay, you've got some pretty good confidence in the quality of that. But then if you start to go to all these customer service conversations and emails and so forth, it can get tricky fast. And I don't have a good answer except to say that it is really important to reduce the garbage in problem as much as you possibly can.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, RJ.
Well, yeah, as a follow-up to that, I had the exact same concern. I don't understand why you would want to have the model not be frozen, because you don't want to be pumping in stuff there that you cannot modify. And the way the memory is stored, as the previous person just said, is it's in a distributed network. So it's not discrete data like in the vector database that you can have more control over, at least. So I would think you would want to keep the large language model frozen, pump in your data into your prompt, just like you were talking about, as you need it. You can answer questions about it, more correctly that way, but don't be trying to modify the large language model itself, because you're just going to be polluting it with all kinds of information that you cannot correct or individually on a data by data level. So I just wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I think, and tell me if I'm not answering exactly what you're driving at, but I think that fine-tuning the language model to better understand the nuances of your data is expensive, requires a lot of expertise. So that's where I favor RAG. And I think the benefit of RAG is that you're not trying to alter the intelligence, the underlying intelligence of the language model. You're not trying to alter the language model. Rather, you're just trying to feed it the best possible information. Because, a lot of companies, I think OpenAI and Bard and so forth are pretty good at creating articulate paragraphs based on what they know. So if it's a question of formulating words to articulate things, great, but make darn sure that it's starting with the right information. And that's where companies can work on that, focus on that instead of fine-tuning.
Yeah, but here you're not talking about fine-tuning the model, right?
No, I'm emphasizing this as an alternative to fine-tuning.
Right. So the model should be frozen in this situation.
Yes, I think it is frozen. I
Okay,
didn't mean to
that
imply
makes
otherwise.
sense now. That makes sense now, because otherwise you're
No,
pumping
I'm not suggesting tuning the model or changing the model.
All right, I think people really need to understand that, because I think most people just don't have it in their heads that information that goes into a large language model cannot be discreetly modified and changed fact by fact. That's just not the way that
it's the algorithm's not
stored
trained to do
information, right? Yeah, and I can provide copies of papers where they're starting to be able to do that a little tiny bit, but it's not like updating the database at all. So that's why it's got to be frozen until you get to the point where you have a corpus of information that is really perfect almost, and you're just trying to update some generic knowledge that you want that language model to be able to respond to. Then you can go doing the fine tuning, like you said, in that process. But then after you fine tune it, you freeze it again, because you don't want to be polluting it with other information. In fact, you can even have catastrophic, forgetting too, if you have too much training going on.
Yeah, I agree completely. You really shouldn't. I mean, it makes sense to fine tune a model if there are real differences in how a certain community uses words, dialect, or things like that. And there are really differences in the ways in which the words will relate to each other. But if you're worried about facts, you should not be fine tuning. You should have a frozen model. I agree with that.
Thanks. People need to be totally clear about that.
Yeah.
RJ, if you have papers that you've seen referenced on it, just post to this.
Oh yeah, totally. I can get them hopefully within the next 5 minutes. I have it right on.
That'd be
hand.
great. Thanks.
Thank you, RJ. We'll do one more, then we'll go open mic. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yeah, so actually, thanks, RJ, because I was going to bring up the exact point that you were going to bring up, which is catastrophic forgetting. So you made that point really well. But I think the other part is that, and yes, fine tuning makes me very nervous because of just what you don't know what the impact is on the model when you start resetting weights based on the new things you put in. And so, but I did have a really just what are your thoughts on these specialized models? Like, for example, now I think it's Llama 2 has come out in like the code version and things like that. And you could easily see that there'd be models that are really tuned more to medical or law or specific things like that. And certainly Bloomberg's probably done it for financial information. What are your thoughts on some of those and how to use them? Are they worth fine tuning, or are you really probably better off just like going with all the work that's already been put into them?
Yeah, Lucinda, great question. I think that specialist models make a ton of sense, and the different communities that you refer to, legal, medical, these are people that use words in a certain way, use certain types of words in a certain way, in ways that other communities don't. And that's where you do the broad generalist capabilities of a ChatGPT are not going to properly capture the dialect and the so forth. So
and especially
that makes perfect sense to start.
Yeah, especially for like the clinical logic that you do for a diagnosis, like that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and then the question is, do you freeze that, or do you start to fine tune it on your own stuff? And the question should really hinge on, do I have unique facts, or do I have unique ways of using languages? If it's unique facts, then RAG, retrieval augmentation generation. If it's unique ways of using language compared to what that specialist model is already pre-trained on, then you can think about fine-tuning more.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Kevin, I appreciate a great presentation, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for putting up with our Zoom problems here. So thank you.
Enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing here and welcome further dialogue with folks in terms of follow-up.
Be great. So let's go to just open mic. We'll go about 5 minutes over, but who has something they would like to share, or a question for the group, or demo, or something they were blown away with?
Raise my hand, so please forgive me for talking up.
Okay, go ahead, Dennis. Is that Dennis?
Yeah, so earlier I was AI, and in there we were speaking about truth and correctness. It's actually a long thing. When we are going in our quote unquote truth or factuality, we can check out facts, but one of the things that I like to do is we can get the attitude of people. And the attitude of people may not necessarily be connected directly to facts or truth. We can tell that from our present political situations. But getting the attitude, getting the temperature, getting the feeling is one of the things that I've come to understand that AI can do for me. It can get a kind of an intent of what's going on. And that, as a product manager, is really important to me. How many people brought my product is one thing. How many people feel a certain way is almost even more important to me.
That's great. Thank you, Dennis. Others want to share contributions. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so the one that blew me away Friday or Monday, I've seen demonstrations of taking a visual, like draw a picture, and giving the chatbot the command of create a web page from my diagram. That's it. From just the picture you draw. I can send the link, but we're getting away from chat botting or talking to chat bots. I can show it a picture and say, create this thing for me, and it will. Amazing.
Amazing. So generative from a picture to a website, not just text to text.
Exactly. It creates the HTML and kicks it out for you. Thank you very much.
It's just stunning. And we're in month 5 or 8 of this revolution. So
a week 12 and a half. I can't wait till December because, man.
Well, good. Well, thanks, Mike. Steve, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I had a question regarding Python. Does anybody can recommend a graphical user interface versus command line?
Have you asked ChatGPT that question, or Bard?
No, I haven't. I figured I asked the group first.
I actually have friends at Red Hat. You've seen my LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me.
Well, thank you.
And I saw there was Watson AI has more of a drawing blocks in a flow chart type thing. That's IBM.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Let's keep going. I want to mess it up again. Louis.
No problem. It's Luis.
L Diaz. How about that?
So yeah, so I attended the AI conference last week, and there was a couple, like the trends that a lot of people were talking about, specifically the investors, is like the move from what they call single player mode to multiplayer mode in terms of the chat interactions for how things are going. What basically moving from individuals to teams. And actually, what was great about Kevin's presentation here too is the movement to kind of more advanced workflows. The one thing, another takeaway that was interesting is, you know, someone mentioned graphical user interfaces for Python. There's already like someone's already working on frameworks for low code, no code platforms for chat interfaces to build your own apps, right? And so that one was interesting. And I said, okay, just hypothetically, let's saying that you can build your perfect app, right? And you build it out and they have a subscription model for it. I said, well, what if something goes horribly wrong and it's not helpful, it's actually really hurtful, or there's some hateful speech going along with it, and you're able to create it and you charge me for the model? He's like, well, we don't indemnify the models that come up. So it's like the fast creation of models, right, and apps for it, but like it's still, people don't really understand like the importance of testing and red teaming and things that go along with it. And that both was intriguing and was also a little bit scary that it's going to, the bar is going to get lowered for people to be able to create their own kind of apps, right?
And particularly around bad actors as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. And that's, I mean, this isn't even bad. I mean, this is just good, naive people throwing things out and just like, and being able to, you know, good people that are putting things out and wanting to kind of please people, get things like solutions quickly. It's going to create an emergence of like sloppy solutions that are going to kind of give this a bad name, in my opinion. That's a trend.
Thank you. We'll go to David Sanchez.
Yes. Well, this no-code tendency have extended with this large language model. The fact that Google released some program called Maker Suite that without code you can make your own large language model based on Palm. When you prompt it, it creates a code for you in Python. You really don't really need to know Python. They give you the interface and you just train this model. Well, you actually prompt this model, and these prompts translate to code in Python that you can implement to make your own chats based on this Palm 2 API, Vertex API of Google. I'm sharing the link in the Zoom. Is really cool because it's free by now. I think it will be custom money if you want to make it into production, but there is a lot of no coders out there that are already into prompting and large language model and want to use it without needing to get into Python, for example.
One quick follow on to that. The other thing I noticed attending from both TechCrunch and the generative AI is the Google Cloud was one of them, but the amount of credits that are going to, the amount of free credits that are being offered by platforms to get AI companies in. Like, so if you want to get into the Google Cloud platform for their solutions, they're offering AI startups up to $350,000 in free credits. And Microsoft is offering $250,000 in free credits, just so they could say 1,000 AI companies are using our stuff. So, and I reviewed like the terms of service of what was needed, and essentially you need like a website, some seed funding, you know, and like a rough business model, and they're like approved. So that's it's interesting, you know. So it's a good time to be a bootstrappy seed level company that's trying to go and get into this space.
Well, I actually have been using AIs in this year, like to make startups, but it's really hard to make a startup right now because you made something 1 month and the other month there are like 10 startups doing the same as you. And 2 months later, Microsoft brings that thing that you made like 3 months ago, but free for everyone. So you're like, oh, I already did this, but it's now free, so I really didn't make anything. I think their strategy is to make people do everything they can with artificial intelligence and then do it by themselves. like what ChatGPT is doing right now, like with text and voice. There were a lot of bots that already use text and voice interfaces, like you can talk with them, a chat with them with voice. ChatGPT wasn't able to do that, but now that it does, a lot of startups based on that technology are already obsolete, for example.
Yeah, that was one thing they definitely said, is that if you have a thinly veiled wrapper around a chat AI, just like forget about it. Don't even try to get funding from VCs at least. But those wrappers will be very well received across enterprise software companies. They're building it.
And if I could just say one really quick thing about competition is someone else selling something. Last time I checked, Burger King is not starving and McDonald's exists. So, you know, the fact that someone else is doing something, even the fact that it's expanded by another company, there are many companies that are still selling things that Microsoft is giving away for free. So, you know, that the fact that someone else is doing it will not run me out of business. Please forgive me for taking up.
No, thank you. Well, let's do a few more. There's anyone having stories from schools, what's going on in high schools or colleges? We've been here in the States, we've got everyone back for about 5 to 6 weeks.
My boys' high school teachers say that they're going back to blue books, which I think is not a bad thing. They're having them sit down and think real time and write with pen and pencil.
I just saw a good video series by a blogger who's also a professor at Wharton, and he's basically integrating it into his class. He's making his students use it. He's making them provide the prompts and so on. So he's doing it in a progressive way, but they're allowed to use it, but they got to show their work.
Our reality is we're going to have to end up competing against people that are using this and don't have any, you know, brakes on saying what they should and should not do. That's going to be our real competition. And if we hold ourselves back because we think we want to be quote unquote honorable, you know, I'm ex-military. Fair fight is one that I win.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you, Kevin, on a wonderful presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
For hiccups on the Zoom. We'll try to figure out what happened there and prevent it again. And as usual, this will be recorded. We'll get this posted on our YouTube channel, hopefully tomorrow, if not within 2 days. And later this week, look for an email from me about how to access the videos from the conference for people who are basic members, which is a new service we're running out for $89 a year.
And the links that you wanted for that paper regarding memory storage and updating, I put them in the chat, and also a YouTube that goes along with it. Yeah, so it's that'll hopefully open up all your eyes that large language models are not databases.
Well put.
And kudos for all the helping each other here. That's really been a nice, wonderful thing in the community, and a lot of it was going on today. So let's keep doing that. So folks in Australia, have a great day. Everyone else, have a good evening.